Hello, my name is Kaitlyn Springer, and I am the Occupational Therapy Doctoral Capstone Intern at Blue Monarch. And this is session 3 of the Sensory and Emotional Regulation training. And today we are going to talk about managing meltdowns and dysregulation. So, what to do when we or our children do get upset, when we have big feelings, when we have negative emotions, when we feel out of control, when we feel high alertness. What do we do when those hard things come up? So first, let's talk about what is a meltdown and what are the different types of meltdowns. So we have sensory and behavioral meltdowns described here. Behavioral meltdowns are probably what you think of classically as a tantrum, as an outburst. They tend to be more predictable, situation-based, have a clear antecedent that happens before it, meaning they might happen more often at home where they feel comfortable and safe with those people, or they might happen more at the store where they see things they like and they have outbursts because they want these things, and they are asking for things and want to take them home. Whereas a sensory meltdown comes from a different place, and both of them have different ways we should approach and treat them. So a sensory meltdown is a little bit different. It is not that classic like tantrum look. They might show similar behaviors, those meltdown behaviors, those big movements, just out of control, loud, but it comes from a different place. It occurs regardless of the social setting or situation. So it could be anywhere, anytime. Sometimes it has a sensory overstimulation antecedent. So you might notice like, oh, they've had a big day, they've had a field trip, they've had lots of sights and sounds and loudness that they're not used to, big crowds, or it might be unpredictable. Our sensory system is taking in information all day long. So maybe this is just the tipping point, and it could be just kind of a surprise to you and your child. And the purpose of a sensory meltdown is to escape or avoid what's bothering them. And you treat a sensory meltdown with sensory strategies like the ones we talked about last week in the sensory zones, profiles, and diets training. Behavioral meltdowns, those more tantrum, you might call them outbursts, again, are more predictable. The purpose of them tends to be more attention-seeking, maladaptive communication of wants and needs. So meaning, I might get mom's attention easier if I have an outburst and I'm loud than if I ask quietly. The answer might come quicker. The answer, if they get used to you appeasing those meltdowns, those fights, they might do that to get something they want, something they need, instead of asking in a more mature, calm way. Or it could be to avoid something that they don't want to face. We treat behavioral meltdowns, those tantrums, with positive reinforcement behavior programs. Now we have a little bit more about those sensory meltdowns as explained by Nicole Quint, who is an occupational therapist. So with sensory meltdowns, she says when you go into fight or flight, your autonomic nervous system is activated and you have a reduced cognitive ability. Cognition is your thinking. So your cognition shuts down and problem solving is not going to happen. When someone tries to give you solutions while you are in a meltdown, it only aggravates the system and makes it become a threat. You cannot work on a meltdown while they are in a meltdown currently. If we try to reason with them, it is only going to make it worse. The limbic system is involved during a meltdown. Meltdowns are not a tantrum or a behavioral communication. They are fight or flight, so survival response. They do not respond well to punishment or a functional behavior plan. It is also important to note that there is shame tied to these meltdowns, the sensory meltdowns. These kids are not proud of their behavior, and it is highly embarrassing and shameful for them. So that's a different perspective on meltdowns, specifically sensory-based ones. Okay, a little bit more about what a meltdown looks like, and then we will talk about things we can do, strategies for each of these phases. So before a meltdown, this phase is called the rumble phase. Those upset feelings, those elevated feelings are starting to bubble up, starting to feel overwhelmed, start to feel like they're losing control, and they may show subtle warning signs that a meltdown is about to happen, which we'll talk about in a few slides what those warning signs could be. This kind of corresponds last week from the zones of regulation with the yellow. So we had blue was low alertness, green was optimal, yellow was kind of elevated, a little heightened, and red was really escalated, very heightened, out of control. So before the rumble is more yellow or orange, if you will, between yellow and red, depending on the situation. During a meltdown, that is rage, that is red. We are up here. The person will feel completely overwhelmed, like they have lost control. Often, if they don't have strong coping skills, they may act out with negative behaviors. At Blue Monarch, we talk about the brain being flipped when we go into fight or flight, meaning we're not accessing that very logical frontal lobe. We're thinking with our survival brain. And then after a meltdown, this is the recovery phase where the behaviors and the outbursts stop. The child may feel really tired. They may be super apologetic, or they might be temporarily or long-term forgetful of some of the actions they did during their meltdown because they were just so out of control and out of touch with their body and their thoughts. And here is a visual of those phases. So we have we're going along in our daily routine and something makes us upset, rumbling. It peaks up to a rage. We come down with recovery and back to daily routine. And you'll notice there's two of these curves. This top curve represents more of a child's response or a person with immature or a poorly developed or poorly practiced emotional regulation. Emotional regulation takes practice. So even adults may act this way. They may have really, really big feelings, really big negative actions in that rage. Whereas someone with healthy coping skills, an adult, goes throughout their day, they have something that makes them upset, they react to it, but they return back to their day with less disruption. So that is the hope, that we practice having, despite the emotions we face throughout our day, that we can be steadier with our reactions. And that's the goal. And this line at the bottom, the prevention strategies, represents that we can use them throughout the day, throughout the different phases of meltdowns, not just before. We don't just have to prevent before. We can use some of them during and definitely some of them after, throughout the day, to prevent as many and as big of meltdowns. So now that we know what meltdowns look like, here is a brief look of what we're going to talk about that we can do for each stage. Now, we're going to talk about them more in detail in later slides, but this is a good slide to put a star next to, note somehow that it's a good summary slide of all the things we're talking about. So before a meltdown, we can use prevention strategies. We can practice healthy coping skills when we are feeling calm, because if we are calm when we practice them, that helps us to better access them when we are upset. If we practice when we're calm, helps it become a habit, which habits are easier to use than something new. We can discuss the range of possible emotions, the range of emotion we felt throughout the day, the range of emotions we could feel, and affirm that all emotions are going to happen in different ways and are okay, but it's our responses, our actions, that really are what matters towards our character, towards good, strong regulation. So emphasize, talk about all the feelings we could have. If you know that something unfamiliar or difficult is coming up, you can have a conversation ahead of time with your child about those situations. Maybe we're starting a new school. We're going to go to summer camp. We're going to see a family member we haven't seen in a while, which probably has both positive and negative things, but has different dynamics. You can talk about what feels exciting, what they're worried about, and problem solve ways they could approach it to make it as positive as possible, or what to do if something negative happens. Also, in general, it's just good to practice slowing down together. Not being in such a rush helps us to think more rationally. And then, so that's all the work we can do beforehand, either during the rumble phase or when we're just calm. During a meltdown, when we're red, when we're super escalated, we're going to focus on de-escalation. We are going to focus on safety of the child, safety of you, safety of the other people, items, and animals around them. And that might mean physically removing them from the situation. Depending on how extreme it is, you may need to move them to a place that is physically softer and safer, like a space with grass, a space with carpet instead of hard floor, to make them as safe as possible. Decrease sensory input. So let's get out of this loud, crowded room. Let's maybe turn down the lights some. Let's not have as cluttered of an environment. Let's not have so much of an audience, so many eyes on us. Decrease all of that so it's less overwhelming, because if we're red, we're going to stay here longer if there's more input that's alerting. Those pink things, all those alerting inputs, the loud, big, bright things, are going to keep us red longer. And then you, as the caregiver, can model grounding strategies. So you might not be able to expect them, depending on where they're at, to join you, but you have got to model co-regulation. You are empowering yourself and them to be strong despite whatever emotions you're feeling. So you're going to show those deep breaths. Other strategies, we'll talk about more options in a few slides. And during this phase, because our brain is flipped, if you will, we're not thinking very rationally. So say very few words during this time, because the words are not going to be well absorbed during this time. So just say calm things like, you are safe, I'm helping you stay safe, you are loved, things like that. After a meltdown, in the recovery time and beyond, you can help your child practice those grounding strategies that we'll talk about in more depth, but help them to do that, to help them bring their body back to calmness, their mind back to calmness. Lovingly discuss and debrief the situation. So before and after, we're ready to talk. During, we're not, but after, we can talk about it. We can allow the child to problem solve for better future actions. And as time allows, as much as possible, help the child practice with a do-over, because that is going to help empower the child that they can face hard feelings, hard situations, kindly and lovingly and with strength, even if it takes multiple trials, that they can do it. That's very empowering. And then also, as needed, depending on the situation, implement the natural consequences. So do they need to help you clean up because we've made a big mess in our meltdown? Do we need to repair hurt relationships with friends, family members, those kind of things? Now we're going to dive a little bit more specifically into our mindset tips and strategies for each phase of the meltdown. This is the before phase, the rumble phase, what could cause a meltdown in the first place. Some common triggers of emotional dysregulation include conflicts in relationships. That might be friendships, that might be family members, that could be teachers, a number of difficult situations. It could be an overwhelming environment, could be overstimulating, could be stressful situation, could be a reminder of past trauma. So next, with before, how can we predict a meltdown before it even happens? Here's some warning signs that we're moving towards that yellow, that rumble phase. Maybe we can bring it back down to green before it ever gets to red. And some of these might be more obvious, and others of them might be things you might not have thought before could be a sign that we're leading towards a meltdown. So some children will act with bigger behaviors, meaning more outbursts during this time. So those might be the things like the girl that's overly silly, she's giggling, you can't rein her in. Someone's defiant, they're talking super, super fast, excessively. They are laughing uncontrollably, they're really loud, they're shrieking or high-pitched yelling. Their face could be flushed, their pupils could get big, they could have more saliva, more drool. They could be super impulsive, so kind of having behaviors that don't really match their kind of best behavior, like they're kind of regressing. That could be a sign. Really big movements, hard, fast, they're just kind of out of control with their body. That could be a child moving towards a meltdown. It could also be more subtle. They could seem a little flushed. They could be more avoidant. They could hide and disengage from the situation. They could seem spaced out. They could seem choked up, not able to talk. They could start yawning a lot, especially with infants. Infants especially, yawning is a stress response sometimes. They could seem overly tired. They could have a bead of sweat. If you give them a hug, their little heart could be racing. So here's some signs that we could be in the yellow, we could be rumbling. Can we help them come back down to earth before we ever get there? We can try. Okay, a bit more about the before, preventing meltdowns. The first 3 of these are a review from last week. You already have great knowledge and tools to prevent having as many meltdowns. Just in general, these all promote better regulation. So hopefully we'll be in green for more of our day. So proprioception and heavy work, those were those green bubbles on the slide last week. Number 2, we can decrease the sensory input, make a less cluttered environment, less loud if our child gets overwhelmed with that. Maybe we play with smaller groups of friends as available rather than such a big crowd. Be less overwhelmed. 3, sensory diet strategies throughout the day. Build in lots of good input that makes sense for what we need to have a connected, more calm, more grounded part of our day. And build in times for kids to be silly and have big movements, and then for kids to have more calmness as appropriate. And then the new one we have today, number 4, is practice emotional naming and grounding when calm. And we're going to talk about what that looks like. So that's our new strategy for today. So this one is about emotional intelligence, which is connected to one way we can work on that is through an emotional naming. So emotional intelligence includes a lot of things. It's really how much we know and understand our emotions and others' emotions. So there's self-awareness about how we are feeling. There's self-management about how we are able to control our actions in response to those feelings. There is social awareness about how others are feeling. Do we pick up on their facial expressions? Do we pick up on their body language? Do we pick up on their tone of voice? And in response to that, are we empathetic? Are we having positive communications that keep positive relationships, keep those managed? So those are the components of emotional intelligence. And you and your child can work on improving that by practicing these things in this bottom section. So first, emotional naming can be helpful. So you can describe the various possible emotions, the range of emotions, when you're calm, and then it will help you to debrief afterwards too, if in moments that are harder. So up here, this chart is an example of an emotional naming chart. There's another one that's a printout within the sensory and emotional regulation binder that you can make a copy and print for your family. But this one says, how do you feel today? And it shows a bunch of different facial expressions with a range of emotions from positive to negative to in between. And when you talk about this, you can practice making those facial expressions with each other. Talk about situations where you might feel that or have felt that before. And when you're debriefing a tough situation, you can point to different things and say, you seemed like you were really angry. Would you say that was how you felt? And then they can reflect yes or no, or yes, I was angry and I was bored, or I was actually really sad and I didn't know how to say that, or I was really jealous of that person's toy. So that can help to be more emotionally intelligent by naming the things we're feeling. Another way is not only encouraging your child to speak about this, but modeling awareness. So, modeling your own emotional intelligence by narrating your own feelings and other people's feelings in a situation. So, that might be that you say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited." You give them a big hug and you say, "When you come home from school, this is the best part of my day." Or on the other hand, if you're having a harder day, you can say, "I am just really, really tired, Susie." And you can, in an age appropriate way, explain why. Like, I have just been really worried about, uh, you getting better from getting sick. It's been really hard worrying about you getting better since you've had the flu. Or I've just been really tired because I haven't been sleeping well. Or I've been tired because I've had a lot of homework. So you can narrate your life. You can also narrate within your household. There's going to be lots of dynamics of other people figuring out their own co-regulation dynamics. And people are going to be at different points on their journey with that. So you can debrief. If you see another family having a hard time, you can say, little Joe is having a really hard time being able to manage or being able to have uh, kind actions when he has hard feelings. And him and his mom are working on that. It seemed like he was really angry, and that was hard for him to manage. And he has been working on it in this way. Have you ever felt that way? So narrate. And then do-overs are very empowering with other children when someone's feelings get hurt. So talking it over afterwards, talking about the feelings they felt, talking about ways they could express it in better ways, all helpful in managing positive emotional intelligence. Next, we are moving to during the rage phase of meltdowns and outbursts and dysregulation. So, reiterating, it's safety first. We protect our bodies and our minds of your child and the people and animals and objects around them. Remove them from a situation if needed, like we talked about before. Create a calm sensory environment if possible. Bring them to a quiet, dimly lit space. Play soft music if that's available, or white noise, or make no sounds at all. Again, wait to discuss. They're not ready to talk in this phase. Don't start talking about their punishments. Don't start making threats about the situation for sure. Just reiterate their safety and that they're loved. You can debrief afterwards. Their safety is the most important thing right now. Them feeling loved is the most important. You can use calming scents like lavender or vanilla if that's available. So that calming sensory environment. You can use proprioceptive input if they're kind of in more of an orange phase, if you will, so somewhere between yellow and red, so they still have some little bit of control they can get. You can look back at those green bubbles from last week. You can give them a big hug if they'll accept it. You can give them firm squeezes to their arms and their legs, gently but firmly, like make them feel really safe and say, keeping your body safe. I'm giving you big hugs, big squeezes. You can encourage them again if they're able to listen. You can say, let's stomp it out. You can stomp down the sidewalk together, get some of that big energy out with proprioceptive input. So here's some things you can do during a meltdown. There's really not a lot. You're kind of waiting out the storm, if you will. But you, again, try to keep them safe. Try to keep a calm sensory environment are the main tips. Next, we have grounding and self-soothing strategies. And these are things that you as the caregiver, as the mom, can use during a meltdown. And then you can encourage your child to do it afterwards. And you also can practice these just when you're feeling healthy, when you're feeling good, to have good coping skills. So These are available lots of different times, but the most important for the phases of meltdown for your child is to practice them after to help them cool down, practice good coping skills. So this first one, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 senses. This is one of my favorite ones that helps you to think outside of yourself. A lot of times in a meltdown, we are having a spiral of thoughts, and we feel very internally focused. We're all worried about our things. And of course, our lives are very important, but it helps to have a bigger picture by looking out to the world. So you can center in the present moment by noticing and naming things within your senses. So you can look at 5 things around you you can see. I can see my water bottle. I can see my pen. I can see Sam the dog wagging his tail outside, and so on. 4 things you can touch around you. 3 things you can hear. 2 things you can smell. 1 thing you can taste. So that's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Another one is the stop skill, the one in purple. So when you and your child feels out of control, this is just kind of some steps to simplify the whole situation. So let's stop. We need to slow down. Number 2, take a step back and breathe. Once you feel more yellow or green, then you're ready to observe what is happening and get the facts. And then P, we proceed mindfully. So we move forward mindfully, calmly, and kindly with a more rational, kind response, which this takes practice. And then this one, be like a tree. This helps us practice slowing down. We can practice this when we're feeling calm as well, so that we can use this strategy if we're feeling yellow. So this one helps us connect to God and His creation by slowing down, standing firmly on the grass or whatever ground you're on, and remember what is true, and try to move away from those spiraling irrational thoughts, such as things like I am loved, I am safe. And you'll stand physically like a tree, really still, just paying attention to the breeze, just really tuning in to stillness. And then this 4th one is a soothing sensory kit. So this will help you have a toolbox, a physical toolbox, of small items that are calming or encouraging to you that you can keep in a place that's easily available to you, so you can have some of those sensory supports in the moment. Here is an example of what we could put as we build a calming sensory kit. Everyone has different sensory preferences, but if you need ideas, look back to what is generally calming, so those blue bubbles, and regulating from the blue and green, which was proprioception, bubble slides from last week. And then here is an example of what you could put in it related to that. So visually, you can put in photos of loved ones or of nature, something that's very calming to you. From a scent perspective, or even from a taste perspective, you could have gum that is a tasty, calming flavor, or you could have lotion or essential oils with soothing scents like lavender. Tactile touch, you could have something soft or squishy and warm, and that could bonus have proprioceptive input because you could squeeze that little stuffed animal tight. You could also have, from a sound perspective, earplugs or a calming playlist on your MP3 player so that you can have more calming noise. A lot of times, at least I feel most overwhelmed with too much noise, so this is helpful. And then also you can put in fidgets for restlessness, so it can have more proprioceptive input too as the hands are squeezing something. So this is something you could put in a little box, a little bag, something on the shelf, something in a backpack, something easily able to grab in the moment when we're having a hard time. let's talk about mother's co-regulation. We talked about this in the very first week. Co-regulation is that dynamic, that back and forth of you and your child feeding off of each other's emotional regulation, off of your alertness states. So you should be empowered that you make such a huge difference in role modeling and in empowering them to have skills that will last a lifetime if you work on these things now. So I want to empower you in that. And then I also want to recognize that these meltdowns can feel like a thunderstorm of big feelings, very loud. And we need to take care of ourselves as adults to be able to ride out those storms calmly, because our children around us are going to be paying attention to the ways that we respond to these hard situations. And we need to take care of ourselves because it's hard work. So these points say children's meltdowns can be emotionally overwhelming and overstimulating for the sensory system. As I just said, it's very loud, moving really fast. So it's important for us adults to take care of ourselves. Self-care is so important. Mother's co-regulation skills and role modeling make a huge difference in nurturing resilience, healing, and regulation in children. And these skills can last a lifetime. They're going to build upon this. This is a huge, very important phase of their life and of your life to work together. Feel free to use any of the kids grounding strategies we talked about. They work for adults too. I know some of them may seem silly, but they work. If they help us slow down, they help us breathe deep, they can work. Next, speak positive affirmations to yourself, internally or out loud, depending on the situation, about your identity in Christ and your strength as a mother to be able to take on these difficult situations. You can do hard things, and you do hard things every day. And you are not alone. You are in community, and God is with you. And then another one, you can try progressive muscle relaxation. You could do this as you cool down from something difficult. If you're waiting out a really long, like if we're like in a really long meltdown and we're just kind of waiting out this child, you can also do this then to help you stay calm, stay cool. So how it works is I like to do it from my feet all the way up to my head. You can do it whatever order, but you squeeze the muscles in that area and for a few seconds, and then you relax and you take a deep breath as you do each one. So you breathe in, you squeeze, 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 and relax. You let it go. So that really helps your body calm down and take really good deep breaths, which is very grounding and helpful for regulation. Next, seek out backup and support when available and when needed. We are, again, not meant to do this life in isolation. When it's all too much, focus, if nothing else, on safety, and you can be quiet. It's not, if you don't know what to say, just don't say anything in the moment. If you don't feel calm enough to say anything, you can discuss it later when everyone is calm. So you got this, mama. Next, this is the after phase. This is the recovery phase and beyond of a meltdown. What do we do then? We need to connect with each other and debrief after dysregulation. So after a child calms down from the intense feelings of a meltdown, then and only then are they ready to rationally discuss and learn from it. So they're not ready during it, but now we're ready afterwards. We've come down to yellow at least, maybe even green. We're ready to talk about it. So you can discuss alternative actions. What could you do better or more reasonably or more kindly next time? Practice emotional naming of the feelings involved before and during the meltdown. Like, I just felt so mad, so frustrated, so disappointed. Those feelings are okay, little Susie. How can we do better next time with our actions? And then try again with do-overs if possible to promote that social emotional learning. That's going to empower your kid that they can do hard things. They can face hard feelings, hard situations. Emphasize connection and compassion. Relationship over rules, as we say. Give hugs if the child is willing, and display you are genuinely patient with them as much as you can give, and love them despite their mistakes. They're learning. You're learning. Have grace for them. Have grace for yourself. Establish that all emotions, and even strong emotions, are okay and will happen, but how we choose to react or respond to them is what matters and what defines our character. One more tool we can use after a meltdown in the recovery phase, you can discuss the size of the problem. This will help your child to be more, over time, react more rationally, more reasonably to match the size of the problem. Now, this will take time. Oftentimes, our children here, as they have, are going to struggle a little bit more. So things are going to feel like things that even might be tiny or small problems. They might have red level reactions, so like emergency level reactions. But over time, they will heal, have more skills, and also think more rationally. They can hopefully tap into pause and think about what the problem actually is more logically. Again, this will take time, helps to discuss and debrief though. And this can even help with ourselves when we're feeling caught up in things. So this is part of the zones of regulation that we talked about last time. The size of the problem is. And this chart is a very good example. It teaches children about how big the issue is, and that generally should determine or match the size of our reaction, so our feelings and response, our actions. And it matches generally with the zone colors that you generally would expect would happen in that situation. It empowers our children to solve their own problems and reach out for help when appropriate. And it helps them increase patience and planning abilities through reflecting on things. Again, very good debriefing tool. It's a good option to bring reality and rational thinking to a situation after the child has calmed down. So, tiny problems are ones you generally can stay green in if we are emotionally have good regulation skills. They're little things you can ignore or just fix super easy. Small problems are you can fix on your own without help. No one's hurt. It takes less than a day to fix. Medium problems, we might feel more yellow, might be more irritated, could affect more than one person, could hurt feelings. This is when we need help. Medium problems, big problems, emergencies, we need help from somebody else. Big problems can't be solved alone. They affect several people, can last a long time, or even be dangerous. And then emergencies are, of course, very serious, could take a long time to fix. A lot of people, they need immediate action. So, again, our kids might have red level reactions to tiny problems. The more we can come alongside them in the tiny and small problems to have more healthy reactions, that's going to help them to be able to face the bigger and bigger things throughout their life. And of course, the tiny and small things are going to come up more often in life. Eventually, the goal is that they face those things on their own. But right now, they might need your supervision and your guidance. So that is the size of the problem, a great debriefing tool. Okay, thank you so much. If you are following along, you can fill out your worksheet based on what we talked about. Those early warning signs of dysregulation, we're kind of partway through in the before stage. Our emotional intelligence can be improved by practicing emotional naming, is that blank, role modeling, narrating, and do-overs goes in that blank. Priority during meltdowns, what goes there is safety first, plus the sensory environment, a calm sensory environment, so you can put calm environment, plus proprioception. For your reflection exercise, either as homework or now with discussion, You will look through these situations and prompts and describe examples. So the first one is, I find myself becoming overwhelmed or dysregulated when. And then the second one's about your child with the same prompt. Grounding and soothing techniques that you currently use, things you could use. Do you tend to react in a way that matches the size of the problem? Why or why not? What could be in a calm sensory kit for you? What about your child? And then list new tools and strategies today that you learned and plan to trial them and implement them in your daily life. Make a plan of when, how, and accountability partner. So there is your homework to help you practice these strategies to manage dysregulation, manage these big feelings, manage meltdowns. Here are the references that helped me to build this presentation. And here are some additional resources and readings if you would like to learn more. The first one is an OT article about sensory meltdowns. The second is an OT blog about sensory dysregulation. The third one is about emotional dysregulation, which is intertwined. And then the last one is strategies to cope with dysregulated children. Thank you so much.